Baby Reindeer, Martha, Part 2. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I'm continuing my analysis of the series Baby Reindeer, which shows on Netflix. The focus is on Martha at the moment. Donnie, played by Richard Gadd, playing himself, and Darian will be examined in due course. Donnie accepts the friend request that has been sent by the stalking Martha. She then starts commenting incessantly on his pictures. That is a lack of boundary recognition. It's intrusive. It appears that she believes what she's doing is fun and friendly. For instance, she repeatedly comments on what he's actually doing. For instance, when he's having a drink, she calls him Thirsty Reindeer. It's almost childlike in the description of him. Nevertheless, she makes jealous comments in relation to the females that he's pictured with. Is this someone who is seeking to assert control over him, hoovering him through these repeated messages? Or is this simply a byproduct of the fixation that she has for him, labouring under the delusion that they are actually in a relationship? At one juncture, she starts to message him live and immediately asks, is there somebody there when he's not responding? Is this demonstrative of someone that's experiencing a threat to control? Or perhaps it's just simple paranoia? On another occasion, Martha turns up uninvited at Donnie's workplace when he's working in the rear yard of the pub. In that moment, she says, "You should have told me last night that you weren't working." Note, is that a sense of entitlement by compelling him to inform her of his movements? She asks, "Who are you texting?" because she noticed that he was on his telephone when she entered the yard. That, of course, questioning, prying, is a lack of boundary recognition. She asks, "Wasn't that Keely bint, was it?" referring to his ex-girlfriend. "Are you fucking her?" she asks. There's no filter in her demand for an answer to that question. But immediately she then catches herself and says, "Sorry, I'm a nightmare." Is it because she knows how she ought to behave, or is she simply concerned about offending Donnie? She then admits that she went on the internet to try and find everything about him. At that point, Donnie becomes worried that Martha will find about Terry, the transsexual, and what her reaction would be in relation to that. On a later occasion, Martha explains to Donnie that he needs to tell her when he's running late. Again, this is similar to the "you ought to tell me when you're not working." Is this a form of control over Donnie, a need to be prescriptive as to how he should behave himself? At this point, Donnie looks to assert a form of boundary and asks her to pay for her drink. She responds by explaining she can't afford it. He then goes on to state that he needs to assert some boundaries, and she says, is this all of a wind-up in the way that he's been treating her like crazy Martha? She then turns on the waterworks and then asks, "Are you saying you've never had feelings for me?" Is this a form of pity play that's being utilised by Martha in order to control him? Or is she simply upset at the rejection that she feels that she's experiencing? Donnie responds that it's the age gap, talking about the fact that he might want to have a family, therefore suggesting that she's too old to do so. As a consequence of that, Martha then continues to pester him, responding with many emails talking about periods and fertility. Was this a nullification of a threat to control as a consequence of him saying, I can't be with you because we can't have a family? She then started arriving 2 hours before the pub opened. And she would then follow him all around the pub, talking about getting married, what their wedding would be like, what it would be like to have a family, what it would like to be together. This is evidently deluded behaviour. But is she future faking him for the purposes of trying to control him by suggesting that this is what a future would be like with him? Or might it simply be that she's completely ensconced in this fantasy of them being together, and it isn't about controlling him, but rather living out the fantasy? That she is so caught up in the delusion that she talks about it as if it's real because to her it is. And it doesn't come necessarily from a place of control, but from a simple place of fixation and delusion. Martha explains that she wants to attend his comedy semi-final, and therefore, in order to try and avoid her, he moves it. Donny is walking home. He takes a route by a canal, something he often does. On this particular occasion, Martha appears. She knows that he takes this route and has clearly been waiting for him. Was this done because she simply wants to spend time with him, to enter into the delusion that she doesn't realise is a delusion, that she honestly believes that they're in a relationship together and therefore should be spending time together? Or is it the case that his failure to embrace that relationship is threatening her control and she needs to get that control back by hoovering, by turning up in person? Might this be a direct physical assertion of control? Earlier, when Donny had been trying to explain to two of his colleagues at the pub that he was being stalked, one of them mischievously sent a message to Martha as if it was sent from Donny by sending it from his email address. It made reference to wanting to have anal sex with Martha. The receipt of this prompts Martha, when she meets Donny down by the canal, to state, "You filthy fucker, I've never taken it up, the chufter." Donny's patience has worn thin, and he tells her to get out of the way. At that juncture, this seems to be problematic, for she reacts angrily, stating she's sick of his blowing hot and cold. Might this be a response to the threat to control as a consequence of him telling her to get out of the way? Is this a heated ignition of fury, perhaps? She responds, "Men who don't fancy me are either blind or gay." We know that she's not particularly physically attractive, and therefore to suggest that any man that doesn't fancy her must be blind or gay is part of the delusion, that perhaps she sees herself through a distortion field and regards herself as incredibly attractive, when the reality is not the case. She states, "Stop pushing me away." And then she starts to press him once again about, who hurt you? It was a man, wasn't it? What did he do? Is this genuine emotional empathy that she is exhibiting? It's also revealed in later episodes about what has actually happened to Donny and that he had been raped and sexually assaulted. Is this another predator able to sniff out the vulnerability of a victim, to recognise that there is this vulnerability whereby he had suffered at the hands of another, experiencing a sexual assault? Is she capitalising on that? Alternatively, is it the case that she's tuned into the feelings of other people because of emotional empathy? And in so doing, this causes her to feel sorry for him, that she picks up on the fact that he has been sexually assaulted and raped by a man, that she realises this, that she's particularly attuned to reading him. This query, does it come from a position of emotional empathy? Is it the case that it's the predator's instinct that's being displayed? Or might it be something else? Donny responds by telling her not to follow him, again trying to assert a boundary, but it fails. Once again, she completely ignores the boundary setting. Might this be the sense of entitlement of a narcissist, or simply the deluded determination of someone who is fixated that they have a relationship with this man? She continues to follow him. She then starts playing tag with him. He tells her to keep away. She ignores that and keeps on following. This time she's laughing, almost as if she's playing a game. It doesn't appear to be the laughter of someone that's enjoying his discomfort, but rather a childlike glee at being caught up in a game with him. She then pushes him up against the wall and, pressed against him, gropes his genitals. She then leans in against him and says, "You're beating." More behaviours of Martha that provide us with further questions as to what she might be. Naturally, she continues to plague the life of Donnie. But is it hoovering? Is it a need to assert control over him? Or is it simply a desire to be with him as a consequence of a mentally unwell fixation that she has with him? We'll continue the analysis in part 3. Join me there.